Hi everyone, welcome to week 2. This week we have a bit of an assignment, so I wanted to go through it with you and show you what a typical response might look like in case you're a little apprehensive in the math or if you have any questions. So we are going to, you can go to the classroom. Yours looks slightly different than mine, but it's very similar, and click on the assignment. And then you'll see there's a list of instructions. The first thing you'll do is download this spreadsheet and work in it. And I've already started it and I've given you kind of an example. So we're going to go to that and I'll kind of toggle back and forth between the two. So we're going to first open and then calculate the GDP for each of the different quarters. So when you open it, your document's going to look like this. It's going to have that information. I'm sorry, I should have put that there. I moved a couple columns. You'll have a little bit of information off to the side here, and you can delete it if you'd like. And that'll allow you to input your GDP right next to it. So what you're going to remember after you see the data is that GDP equals consumption plus spending. What they mean here is government spending plus investments, plus, and then you'll put in parentheses exports minus imports. And you will put it like that. You can do that in a formula. I've written mine as such, so you can copy something similar. The only thing to really be cognizant of is to use those parentheses. Once you've finished, you can actually graph it. And so what I did is I just did insert, and then I selected a graph, and then I just made one. It's not, when it comes up, it's not going to have probably the labels that you're going to want to see. So it's select my data. I'll show you what it kind of looks like. Insert, and then I just picked one. And you can see here, it doesn't really look quite like the one I've created here. And so sometimes I'll go in and I'll type in GDP. This is what I did to mine. And then you can add different things to it depending on what your interests are. See this right here, you can add different elements. And this is how I went in and added titles, data labels. That way you can see exactly what they look like, things like that. But it is all up to you. What you'll find is when you have these, you can actually go in and delete, write GDP. You could, instead, if you wanted to make it more comprehensive, you could put in, 2016 Q1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 2017 Q1 through 4. I didn't get that specific in mind. It's really up to you, just so that you can see that our data trends upward and then it starts to trend back downward. And so after you've done this part, you will have completed our steps 1 through 4. And so then we're going to move into step 5, and we're going to look at that data. When they say analyze, that means look at the data and determine, what happened. So we are going to look whether we had economic growth or recession. And so we're going to see that we had growth for 2016 and recession 2017. At that end of, that first quarter, or I'm sorry, final quarter of 2016, it starts to trend downward. And so you're going to write that in whichever way you would like. Remember, it used to be that after 2 consecutive terms of a GDP drop, we would call that a recession, and 4 periods would be a depression. However, they've kind of changed it over the years, and really there are certain people who call it recession or not. And that we could be in a period of, GDP just flat rather than decreasing, and they could call it a recession. Or we could have a series of drops and we could still not term it a recession. So we have to be careful. I think a lot of those who decide this kind of thing are more careful in how they call a recession, just because there's so much on the internet and so much on the news that it could trigger your expectations to be lower. And the expectations are a very important part of how our economy grows or shrinks. So we want to be careful in how we talk about that. So I think they're more careful about calling a recession than they used to be. So then after you talk about that, we're going to go to the bottom part and it asks what government spending is going to be, and it gives you the data for the other numbers. And so I kind of wrote that in. And so you're going to decide what this is. And if you remember doing it in algebra class, this will be our X, and we'll calculate it based on what's missing. So if we had 100, we could use our formula and do a little bit of algebra to figure out the rest of it. So let me go back to our assignment and see the last part. From a perspective of a business executive looking at this data, what does the data say about the country's ability to attract foreign investors and opportunities for growth? Use data as the basis. So you're going to look this up. I'm not going to give you this answer. I want you to decide, and I would like for you to write this. I would prefer you didn't write your answer in the Excel. I would like to see the Excel and the paper, because your paper should be a little bit longer, in that you should have a reference and you should write it to where it's easy to read. I don't mind if you want to take this data and put it in a Word document. You could leave it in Excel, you could have a Word document with all of this. It doesn't matter, but I would like the written part of the paper to not be in these cells, just because it is very difficult for me to read. So if you have any questions as you get started, please let me know. I hope you have a